Everyone knows Prince William and Prince Harry. Their faces have filled newspapers for over 40 years. But there are two other people who grew up in the same tangled royal story, who sat at the same Christmas tables, who watched history unfold from a few feet away, and almost nobody can name them. They are Queen Camilla's own children. And their story, quiet as it is, says more about what really happens behind palace walls than any scandal ever could. This is the story the cameras usually miss. Long before she became Queen Camilla, before the crown, before the coronation gown and the balcony waves, she was simply a mother of two. Her son Tom was born on December 18, 1974, and her daughter Laura arrived on January 1, 1978. Their father was not Charles. He was a British Army officer named Andrew Parker Bowles, and for over 2 decades he was Camilla's husband. Camilla and Andrew got engaged shortly after meeting and married in July 1973, welcoming Tom the following year and Laura in 1978. AOL. This is where the real story begins, not with a crown, but with an ordinary family living an ordinary life, years before anyone imagined Camilla would one day sit beside a king. Charles, of course, had his own path. He married Princess Diana in 1981, and the couple had 2 sons, William, born in 1982, and Harry, born in 1984. For years, 2 separate families existed in 2 separate worlds. Nobody watching Tom and Laura grow up in the English countryside could have guessed that their lives would one day braid together with the 2 princes, whose every move was already being photographed. AOL. Then came the unraveling that tabloids never stopped talking about. Charles and Diana separated in 1992 amid allegations of infidelity on both sides, and their marriage was formally dissolved in 1996. Camilla and Andrew's marriage ended too, splitting in December 1994 after Camilla quietly rekindled her relationship with Charles. It was a messy, human, painful period for both families, not a fairy tale, not yet. AOL. A year after Diana's tragic death in 1997, Camilla and Charles finally went public as a couple, and their relationship faced intense scrutiny, Camilla and her children included. For Tom and Laura, this meant something most teenagers never have to face: their mother's private life becoming a national obsession, debated in newspapers and pubs across Britain. AOL. By 2005, the dust had settled enough for a wedding. Charles and Camilla married in a civil ceremony that April. And in a detail that rarely gets told properly, it wasn't just the 2 of them standing at the front of that room. All 4 of their children, Tom, Laura, William, and Harry, attended the wedding at Windsor Guildhall, and it was at that moment Camilla officially became Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Cornwall. A single photograph from that day tells the whole story better than any headline. 2 grown sons who had lost their mother, and 2 grown children whose mother had just remarried, standing together in the same room, forced by circumstance to figure out what family even meant now. AOL. Yahoo! It would have been easy for Tom and Laura to disappear from the story entirely after that. Most people expected them to, and in many ways, they did choose to stay out of the spotlight, but not out of the family. Tom Parker Bowles grew up to become one of Britain's best-known food writers. Born in 1974, he built a career as a London-based food critic, with work appearing in the Mail on Sunday, Tatler, and other major publications, and he became the author of several books, including The Year of Eating Dangerously and cookbooks like Time for Tea. Perhaps the most striking detail about Tom's relationship to the royal family is one most people never hear. He is Charles's godson, a bond that existed long before Camilla and Charles ever became a couple. AOL. Laura, meanwhile, took a quieter path. Laura Parker Bowles Lopes, born in 1978, married her husband Harry Lopes in 2006 and took his name. And according to her professional website, she works in the arts as an art historian. The couple went on to have 3 children, twin sons, and a daughter, who later served as a bridesmaid at Prince William's wedding to Kate in 2011. Good morning, America. Good morning, America. That last detail is worth sitting with for a moment. Laura's daughter, standing at the altar in a bridesmaid dress at one of the most watched royal weddings in modern history. Not a stranger to the family. Not a distant relative wheeled out for a photograph. A child who belonged in her own quiet way to the same sprawling, blended family tree. For years, the question hovering over Tom and Laura was simple. Would they ever really be accepted as part of royal life? Or would they always be the outsiders who happen to share a mother with two princes? Tom answered that question himself, more honestly than most royals ever speak to the press. "We are married in, we are not the royal family," he said plainly in an interview, adding that he finds everyone in the family incredibly nice and friendly. It's a small sentence, but it says everything about how Tom sees his own place in this story, not chasing a title, not performing loyalty for cameras, just stating a fact and moving on with his life. Yahoo! And yet married in does not mean distant, quite the opposite. Since his mother's marriage to King Charles, Tom has spoken warmly about the realities of blended families, saying his own children adore King Charles, who has become a wonderful step-grandfather to his kids, Lola and Freddie. The children even gave their royal grandparents their own private nicknames, the kind that have nothing to do with titles or protocol. "All of our children, my sister's children, too, have grown up with Gaga and Uppa," Tom explained. "They've grown up from an early age knowing no different. They know Gaga as Gaga, and that she's a really great grandmother who occasionally spoils them in a good way." Yahoo! Yahoo! Gaga and Uppa, not your majesty, not King Charles I. Just grandparents in a child's own words doing what grandparents do, showing up, spoiling the kids a little, being ordinary in the middle of an extraordinary life. That thread of ordinariness runs through how Tom describes growing up in his mother's household, long before any of this became public property. He once described how the family handled hard times with humor, saying his mother's motto was simply, "You have to laugh," and describing how whenever things got bad, we just pulled back together like the Roman centurions moving into their tortoise formation with the shields around. It was important, that power of togetherness. It's a strange and vivid image, a Roman battle formation used to describe a British family closing ranks during their worst moments. But it explains something real about who these people are underneath the royal photographs, a family that leaned on each other long before any of them wore a crown. AOL. The next generation only deepened these ties. By the time of the king's coronation in May 2023, the blending of these two families was no longer a question. It was simply a fact of royal life. Tom and Laura's children took on formal roles in the ceremony itself. Master Freddie Parker Bowles joined his cousins, Master Gus Lopes and Master Louis Lopes, as Camilla's pages of honor at the coronation. 3 young boys, walking beside their grandmother at one of the most significant ceremonies in modern British history, carrying her train as she was crowned queen. Good morning, America. At that same coronation, Camilla was joined by her grandchildren, Freddie Parker Bowles, Louis Lopes, and Gus Lopes, standing close beside her as history was made. These are not the faces most people picture when they think of the royal family, but they were there, at the center of it, in a moment that will be remembered for generations. AOL. Even so, Tom has been refreshingly honest that this closeness has limits, and that not everything about royal life has folded neatly into his own. He has openly discussed how he still hasn't attended a royal family Christmas himself for various personal reasons, while also describing warm relationships with the wider family, mentioning Peter Phillips, whom he grew up alongside, Zara Tyndall, and Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, whom he calls 2 of the nicest women you'd hope to meet. AOL. That kind of honesty is rare in royal circles, where most family members choose careful silence over candid interviews. Tom's willingness to speak plainly about blending in, about staying out of some traditions, about which relatives he's closest to, gives outsiders a rare, real window into a family that usually keeps its doors firmly shut. And then, in December 2024, something happened that quietly rewrote the family's public story once again. Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes marked their first Christmas with King Charles and other members of the royal family at Sandringham. Although they weren't seen during the traditional public walkabout, they did attend the Christmas Day church service at St. Mary Magdalene, arriving privately, away from the cameras. It wasn't a grand announcement. There was no press release calling it historic. But for a family that had spent nearly 2 decades existing in careful, separate orbits around the same royal calendar, it marked something new. Hello. Hello. The story behind that quiet moment is, in its own way, more touching than any headline could capture. Tom, who food critics know as one of Britain's most respected voices and who had just turned 50 the week before, and his sister Laura, 46, are known to be very close with their mother, and often speak warmly of her in interviews. According to Tom, it was Camilla herself who personally asked them to come. "My mum said, 'I'd love you to come, I haven't had Christmas with you for a long time,'" he shared, offering a rare glimpse into their private family dynamics. Hello. Hello. Not a decree, not a palace statement. A mother missing time with her children, simply asking them to come home for Christmas. It is worth remembering how different this reality is from the version of this family that circulates in tabloids and clickbait headlines, stories of banishment, secret decrees, and dramatic falling-outs that never actually happened. As one royal watcher bluntly put it when confronted with rumors of hidden feuds, King Charles and Queen Camilla don't even live in Buckingham Palace. There is no dispute between them, royal or otherwise. The real story of Camilla's family isn't one of exile or secrecy. It's smaller than that, and in many ways more meaningful. Two adult children who chose, again and again, to show up for their mother, on their own terms, without ever needing to claim a royal title to prove they belonged. Quora. Camilla's children have no place in the line of succession, and they have spoken openly in the past about feeling somewhat detached from formal palace life. Yet despite that distance, both Tom and Laura have consistently shown up to support their mother at major public events over the years. Her wedding, her coronation, and now, finally, a Sandringham Christmas. AOL. That in the end is the real story hiding behind the crown, not palace silence, not a dramatic decision made behind closed doors. Just a blended family built out of two broken marriages and one very public second chance, quietly finding its own way to hold together, one Christmas, one coronation, one Gaga and Uppa at a time.